Welcome to Discovering the Ancient Paths. I am Pastor Mark Biltz of El Shaddai Ministries. We meet every Saturday morning in Tacoma, Washington from 10 a.m. to 12:30. One of the most exciting things we do is to look at the New Testament through the lens of the culture during the very days of the Messiah. We also go through the Torah, or the first 5 books of Moses, throughout the entire year, dividing it into 52 sections, so over the year, all 5 books are covered. Remember after the resurrection, on the road to Emmaus, how the disciples' hearts were burning as Jesus opened up the Old Testament to them in ways they had never seen. That's what we do every week. Join us on the journey of your life right here at El Shaddai Ministries, meeting every Saturday morning right here in Tacoma, Washington from 10 a.m. to 12:30. We'll see you there. Well, the Torah portion today is Toldot, which literally means generations. And this is, I believe, one of the most significant generations in all of history. To think you could have lived any time in history, but God chose you to live right here, right now, in this generation. Well, the amazing thing about the Hebrew word Toldot, it means more than just genealogy. When you think of generations, it actually also refers to all of the family stories. Just like when you were listening to your mom and dad tell you about Uncle Bob and Aunt Sally and, Grandpa and Grandma and their great-grandpa, and you go back and you look at when they came on the Mayflower and all they encountered. That is all encompassed in this word Toldot. It means more than just the generations, but all the stories that go along with it. Okay, so here we go. To Toldot. I want to begin with this. How many of you, here's a quiz. All of you online can play too. You all know the answer. How old was Abraham when Isaac was born? 100 years old. Well, let's look at Genesis 25:7, which is from last week's Torah portion. It says, "These are the days of the years of Abraham's life which he lived. He lived to be 175 years." Okay, so Abraham lived to be 175. So if he died at 175, how old was Isaac? 75. All right, now let's go to our Torah portion, Genesis 25:19 to 20. Now these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. We know Abraham begat Isaac, and look at this. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel, the Syrian of Paddan Aram, and she was the sister to Laban, that mean rascal, the Syrian. That's in the Mark Biltz version. Okay, so when Isaac married Rebekah at 40, how old is Abraham? 140. Okay, so he knew Rebekah for 35 years. Got it? All right. Now, let's look at Genesis 25:26. Isaac gets married at 40, but guess what happens? Rebekah can't get pregnant for 20 years, and we see that she gives birth to twins, Jacob and Esau, and it says, after that came his brother out, and his hand took a hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Heel Grabber. Okay, Yaakov, the heel grabber. And here we see Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. So how long was Rebekah barren? 20 years. Okay. Now, how old is Abraham when Jacob and Esau is born if Isaac is 60? He's 160. That means Jacob and Esau knew Grandpa Abraham for 15 years. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you something that is mind-blowing. I think you've seen it all before. And for those of you online, I'm having them put it on our Facebook post and different things like this. I created this. I've updated a little bit. But this is the Isaac timeline, since we're looking at Isaac. Now, this is absolutely incredible. I have a laser here, but it doesn't work, so it's not going to help. So we're going to start at the far left. Up at the top, I have Isaac's age timeline. Isaac is this old when this happens. So if you're on the far left, you see in Genesis 17:17, Okay, so Isaac is born, you see under Genesis 17:17, born when Abraham is 100, Sarah is 90, and Ishmael is 14. All right? Now, when you look at your Bible, Genesis 20 is when Abraham goes to Abimelech. This is before Isaac is born, and after he prays for Abimelech's wives, now his prayer is answered, and Sarah gets pregnant. And then we find in Genesis 21, Abimelech goes to Abraham there. Now, we talk about the famine is in the land, which is why Abraham had to go to Egypt. And I'm just speculating, but I wouldn't be surprised if the famine wasn't due to atmospheric change from the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. That could have been the very thing that caused the famine in the land. Not sure. But then you'll notice on the second thing, it says, Abraham binds Isaac, and Sarah dies at 127 years old. And then Isaac at 40, this is Genesis 25:20, he marries Rebekah. And then we find in between those years, he goes to Abimelech himself in Genesis 26. And now we see at 60 years old, which is where we're at, Jacob and Esau is born. And then we find Isaac is 75 years old when Abraham dies. Jacob and Esau are 15 years old. That's what we just talked about. So we're caught up to where we are. Now what's amazing, in Genesis 26:34, because there's a 60 years difference between father and son, when Isaac is 100 years old, Esau is 40, and he marries a Canaanite. What is the one thing they were not to ever do? Marry a Canaanite. Esau should know better. He's 40 years old. When Isaac is 110, that's when Shem dies, Noah's son. Shem outlives Abraham. Can you imagine? Abraham got to study and know Shem his entire life. No wonder he believed in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He had the very guy on the boat. Did you know Abraham even got to talk to Noah? Abraham knew Noah, and Abraham knew Shem. So they got the download, all right? And so Shem dies, and look at this. Esau now has had a family for 10 years, and yet he's willing to sell the birthright to Jacob, who doesn't even have a kid. Jacob is not even married. Jacob doesn't even get married till he's almost 90 years old. Okay, watch this. So Shem dies. Esau, who now has a family, sells the birthright over food. Jacob and Esau are 50 years old, guys. They're 50 years old. Esau's a mighty hunter before the Lord. And he says, oh, forget the birthright. I don't care about my grandkids. I don't care about my kids. This is what makes it so horrible. Okay, well, now look at this. Genesis 25:17. Isaac is 123 years old when his brother, his half-brother, Ishmael dies. Ishmael dies at 137 years old, you'll find in Genesis 25:17. How old is Ishmael when he dies? 137. You see that? Ishmael dies at 137. Well, guess what? As soon as Isaac turns 137, he thinks he's going to die too. So what happens? In Genesis 27:30, when Isaac is now 137 years old, he thinks he's going to die. This is when he blesses Jacob over Esau, and they are 77 years old. When Esau's crying out, "Oh, Daddy, Daddy, bless me." He's 77, guys. I'm trying to put all this in perspective. Okay, well, get a load of this. Then in Genesis 29:20 through 30, Isaac is 144 years old when Jacob has to work 7 years to marry Leah. And so what happens? Jacob is 84 years old when he marries Leah and Rachel. Now, you think that's bad? Look at this. Isaac is now 151 years. Okay, Jacob marries Rachel. He doesn't have to work for Rachel and then marry her. He marries her a week. He fulfills Leah's week, and immediately he gets Rachel. And then he has to work 7 years, okay, for what he's already gotten. And so look at this. He works 7 years. Now Joseph is born when Jacob is 91 years old. But what blows me away is then he also works 6 more years for livestock. He leaves Laban, and he's wrestling the angel when he's 97 years old. When you think in your mind of Jacob wrestling the angel all night, we think he's probably 37 or 40. He is 97 years old, and he won. When they leave Laban, they're entering the promised land. Joseph is just a little boy of 6 years old. That's it. So I'm trying to put everything in perspective, because all too often when we see the picture of Jacob and Esau over the birthright, we think they're like teenagers. They were in their 50s. And when we read about what we're going to be reading about is when Esau's whining because he didn't get the blessing. My goodness, they're 77. They're almost 80 years old. And then he's almost 100 when he's wrestling an angel. Okay. Genesis 37:2. Isaac is 168 years old when Joseph is sold at 17. Jacob is 108 years old. Somewhere in between there, Rachel dies and Benjamin is born. We'll talk about how old Benjamin is in a coming up Torah portion. Okay, so now we read that Isaac dies at 180. Jacob and Esau are 120. Okay, and then we know that Jacob goes into Egypt to see Joseph. Joseph is released at 30 years old. Jacob is 121, and then the 7 years of prosperity have begun. But anyway, then Jacob comes in to see Joseph, 9 years later. The 7 years of prosperity passed, 2 years. But I'm going to be extending this timeline in the future so you guys can follow better what all is unfolding. But as we read these stories today, I wanted you to have in your mind how old these guys are, because we just have the wrong picture. I don't know if I even like the idea of 97-year-old wrestling an angel anyway, but it's the facts. We stick with the facts here. Okay, so here's the other thing I want to bring out, though. Since Isaac was 75 years old when Abraham dies, and Jacob and Esau were 15 years old, that means it wasn't until 20 years later when Jacob and Esau were 35 years old that Shem died. So Jacob and Esau got to know Shem also for 35 years. Okay, Esau is out hunting, and I believe Jacob is sitting at the feet of Shem for 35 years. Okay, now, Isaac, as I said, knew Shem for 95 years. Now, I just want to bring this out. In next week's Torah portion, we're going to find out that in Genesis 35:28, that Isaac was 180 years old, which means Jacob and Esau were 120. All right. Also, we're going to find in Genesis 47:28, we're jumping way ahead, Jacob lived in the land of Egypt for 17 years, so the whole age of Jacob was 147 years. You see that? Okay, watch the math. We like to stick with math here. Noah lived 350 years, it says, after the flood. Genesis 9:28 and 29. Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. So, as I said, Abraham personally knew Noah for 58 years. Can you imagine the stories? Talk about the generations, and it means stories. How would you like to personally be a relative of Noah and have great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa Noah telling you for 58 years all about what it was like on the ark? All right. Now, here's something else. If Abraham knew Noah for 58 years, was Noah already living in Israel when Abraham finally arrived? And was Shem, who is Melchizedek, also already having his university in Jerusalem? Something to think about. So Genesis 11, 10 and 11, I want to show you something. It says, these are the generations of Shem. Shem was just 100 years old, and he begat Arphaxad 2 years later after the flood. Shem lived after he begat Arphaxad 500 years, and he begat sons and daughters. Okay, so here's the thing. Let's see. So Shem was 600 years old. He was 100 years old when the flood came, and then he lived after he begat Arphaxad 500 years. That's a total of 600 years. So that means Shem lived over 500 years after the flood. Following me? Well, and going over the generations from Genesis 11, 12 to 26, here's what we find. Shem is already 390 years old when Abraham is born. Okay? And he outlives him. Shem is 490 when Isaac is born. And he's 550 when Jacob and Esau are born. Shem is 565 when Abraham dies. So again, Shem knew Jacob and Esau until they were about 50 years old. All right, with that said now, let's go back to our Torah portion in Genesis 25. We're going to pick it up with verse 21. Here we see Isaac entreats the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord heard him, and Rebekah conceived. And it says the children were having a fist fight in the womb. All right, and she said, why do I live if this is going on? And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord tells her, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples will be separated from you. One will be stronger than the other, and the elder will serve the younger. Isn't that amazing? And it's just within seconds probably, or minutes that they're, born. But here's what I think is fascinating too. Why is it that Rebekah, not Isaac, received the word concerning God's choice of Jacob being over Esau? Did Rebekah ever tell Isaac that God told her that Jacob is preferred over Esau? And I think it's also interesting that it was Eve, not Adam, who received the prophecy concerning her seed. Sarah, not Abraham, correctly discerned God's choice of Isaac over Ishmael. Miriam, Yeshua's mother, not Joseph, receives the angelic word first. Do you see a pattern here? Okay. We need to be listeners. Now, here's a verse I believe that it was added. It's not on your notes, but I think it's fascinating, and it's in our Torah portion, and it's Genesis 25, verse 28. Short verse. Listen to this. It says, now Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his venison, and Rebekah loved Jacob. Okay? Rebekah loves Jacob unconditionally. Isaac loves Esau just because of the food he brings. Isn't that interesting? Isaac's love is conditional for Esau. Rebekah's love is unconditional for Jacob. We find in verse 31 through 33, after Esau's been out doing a busy day hunting at 50 years old, and he has a family, he's married a Canaanite. Jacob said, hey, sell me this day your birthright. And Esau said, behold, I'm at the point to die. What profit will this birthright do to who? He's not concerned about the next generation. He's only concerned about him. He's totally selfish. And so Jacob said, well, swear to me this day. And he swore to him, and he sold his birthright to Jacob. Now, look at this. Here we go. Genesis 25:34. Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils, and he ate and drank and rose up and went his way. So Esau despised his birthright. All right, well, here is what is something that is very interesting about this. Okay, look right here. This is been around for thousands of years. It's the Jewish funeral guide. Jewish mourning, the first week. So this is all about the mourning rituals when someone dies. The very fact that Jacob is making a pot of stew of lentils and bread tells you somebody has died. It's the meal of condolence. And what do they serve? Bread and lentils. Someone has just died. So we go back and we look at our timeline and look, when Isaac, right in the middle, is 110 years old, Shem dies. So what has happened? Now they're concerned. Not only has Abraham died, Shem now dies. Who's going to get the birthright? For Jacob, even though he is single, puts more value on the birthright than Esau does, who is married. And so what we're finding out here, the reason he's making the stew and lentils is because Shem has died, and that puts so much more the significance of what is going on at this time. Let's go to Genesis 14, verse 18 and 19. Now, this also begs the question, too, on my notes. Remember, after Abraham goes to offer up Isaac, and then it says, just he returned to meet his two servants. Where did Isaac go? I tell you what, Isaac knew Shem. I think Isaac went to Jerusalem and visited with Shem for a while. That's personally what I think happened, to find out what is going on. Okay, so let's look at Genesis 14, 18, and 19. Let's go back a minute. It says, Melchizedek was the king of what? Salem, short for Jerusalem. And he brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest. He's both a king and a priest of the Most High God. He blessed him. He blessed Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And so I believe that Jacob attended the school of Shem. And now what is happening, the kingly priesthood of Melchizedek is being passed on as well. Who is going to be the next priest and king? And Esau wants nothing to do with it. We see in Exodus 19:6, God told Israel they were to be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. Well, after Shem's death, who is alive at the time to inherit the priesthood? Okay, it's going to be Jacob or Esau. All right. Now, let's look at how they were described, both Jacob and Esau. Go to Genesis 25:27. It says, the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. When you think of a plain man, what do you think of? What does plain mean? Well, here's some different translations. People ask me what translation of the Bible I like to use. I like to use a bunch to get different perspectives if I'm just doing general reading. But here's one translation says that Jacob was a homely man. He was homely. Now another translation says he was a quiet man. So he's plain, he's homely, he's quiet. How about we look at the Hebrew and see what the Hebrew says? It says basically that he was tameh, and that means he was a man of integrity. He was a man of truth, without blemish, blameless, without spot. That's what Jacob was referred to. Fascinating. And then we find in Genesis 26, 1 through 5, there was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. So here we see Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, to Gerar, which is like on the Gaza Strip. And the Lord appears to him. And he tells Isaac, don't you go down to Egypt. Dwell in the land that I tell you of. Sojourn in this land, and I'll be with you. And I'll bless you and your seed. And I will give you all these countries. And I will perform the oath which I swore to Abraham your father. I'll make your seed to multiply as the stars of heaven. And will give to your seed all these countries. And in your seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Now look at this. This is a mind-blowing phrase. This is because Abraham obeyed my voice. He kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my Torah. What? Abraham is several hundred years before Moses. What in the world Torah, commandments, statutes, laws did Abraham have? Did he obey? Just want you to know Abraham followed Torah. All right, let's go to Genesis 26, 12 through 15. What do we see? Isaac sows in that land, and he reaped in the same year 100 times what he planted. Imagine this. In a time of famine, Isaac reaped 100-fold. How many of you know perilous times might be coming? But guess what? If God has chosen you, you're very well could be reaping 100 times fold blessing as well. It says the Lord blessed him. The man grew great. He grew more and more until he became very great. He had possessions of flocks, possessions of herds, a great household, and the Philistines envied him. Now look at this. Now all the wells which Isaac's father Abraham's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father, the Philistines had stopped and filled it with dirt. In a time of famine and drought, what is the most important thing you can have? Water. And yet, what did they do? The Philistines were so jealous, they filled all the water wells with dirt. That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. It's just like when Israel gave the Gaza Strip back all of these fantastic places for growing food. What did they do? They destroyed it all. Talk about cutting off your nose just to spite your face. In famine, you want to water yourself. You want to water your livestock. How stupid. But let's go on. History repeats itself. Okay, so look at Genesis 26, 16, and 17. Abimelech says to Isaac, get out of here, for you're mightier than we are. Wow, hello. I'd say, hey, you're mightier than we are. Why don't you stick around and help us? But no, they want to drive him off. And so he departed and he camped in the valley of Gerar and he lived there. So he went a couple miles off. And then look at verse 18. So Isaac digs again the wells of water which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham. Okay? And he says he even called their names after the names by which his father had called them. Do you know what this tells me? Listen to this. Our reinvestigation and digging into the ancient roots and wells is much like Isaac's journey going back to the well of living water of his father Abraham. The original sources have been hidden and buried from us, and we know the Torah is likened to a well of living water. And guess what? It has been hidden from Christians and filled with dirt. And what we're doing is we're redigging those ancient wells of living water that Abraham has dug. That's what this movement is all about. And then we find in Genesis 26:34, Esau was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beeri, the Hittite of all things. He married a Hittite, which means terrorist. And Basemath, the daughter of Elon, another Hittite. And they were bitterness of spirit unto Isaac and to Rebekah. Okay, so Esau's married. He married Canaanites 10 years before Shem has even died. Esau very well talked to Shem, right? And Shem and Japheth were the ones who covered Noah, okay, when Ham exposed Noah, what he had done. So Shem had told Esau that the Canaanites are cursed personally. He knew, he was there when Ham was, and when Canaan was cursed because of what his father Ham had done. So he specifically knew from Shem himself, who was on the boat. And yet he disregarded it. Genesis 27:1. Now this here's something that I thought was quite fascinating. It came to pass when Isaac was old, his eyes were dim so that he could not see, and he called Esau his oldest son. Notice it says his oldest son. And he says to him, my son, and he said, behold, here I am. I think it's fascinating that it doesn't say, and he called his firstborn. It doesn't use the word firstborn. It says eldest son. Well, the next thing, how many of you know physical blindness is often a common metaphor for spiritual blindness? Why Isaac, knowing he married a couple of Canaanites, thinks he can pass the blessing on to Canaanites. Inherited blindness comes to both Isaac and Jacob. Let's look at Romans 11:25. This is what is so significant for Christians to understand in the New Testament. Romans 11:25, it says this, I would not, brothers, you would be ignorant of this mystery, lest you would be wise in your own conceits, that blindness has happened how? In part to Israel or Jacob, until the fullness of the Gentiles come in. So yes, Partial blindness, not complete blindness, partial blindness has come to Israel. Now, how about 2,000 years later? How could Israel still be partially blind? Well, a Jew would have to be totally blind to accept a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Messiah who abolishes the Torah and whose followers regularly kill Jews in his name. What is more, such a statement ignores Christianity's own blindness to the Messiah. Even though we possess the Gospels for 2,000 years, Christians are still largely blind to the fact he was Jewish. They don't even know his real name, Yeshua. So partial blindness is on both sides. Matter of fact, listen to Isaiah chapter 42, verse 19 through 21. Listen to what God says. Who is as blind as my servant? Who is blind but my servant? Or who is as deaf as my messenger, the one I'm sending, that I sent? Who is blind as he that is perfect, and blind as the Lord's servant? They see many things, but they observe nothing. Opening the ears, but they don't hear. The Lord is well pleased for his righteousness' sake, and here it is, he will magnify the law and make it honorable. That is my number one favorite verse. You always hear me talking about it. Right here it is, Isaiah 42, 19 through 21. God's whole purpose is to magnify the law and make it honorable, not to destroy it, say it's done away with, it's null and void. Matter of fact, look at Luke 19, 41 to 42. When Yeshua had came near, he beheld the city, and he wept over it, saying, if you had only known, at least in this your day, the things which belong to your peace, but now they are hid from your eyes. They could see, but they couldn't see. Isaac could see, but he couldn't see. Jacob could see, but he couldn't see. And the church can see, but they can't really see. Look at the Laodicean church in Revelation 3, 20 through 25. They're blind. Look at Luke 24, 15 and 16. It happened on the road to Emmaus, while they talked and questioned together, that Yeshua himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. That's what's happening today. God is going to remove the blinders very shortly, and I believe Israel is going to recognize Yeshua as the Messiah. God blinded Isaac's eyes. Why did God blind Isaac's eyes? It's to accomplish his purposes in bringing forth the Messiah through Jacob. Think about this. Had Isaac not been blinded and could plainly recognize Esau, the redemption process would have taken a completely different turn. The same thing, if Israel had not been blinded, what would have happened to the redemption of the Gentiles? These are patterns that we are looking at. Now, here's what's amazing. In Genesis 27, 2 through 4, Isaac calls Jacob and Esau together, right? And look at this. He says, behold now, I'm old and I don't know the day of my death. Well, guess what? Guess how old Isaac was when he said that? 137, the same year his brother Ishmael died at 137. This is why, he says, well, I may be half blind and not as mentally sharp, but I could die any time. This is when my brother died at this age. Okay. He says to Esau, now therefore take, I pray you, your weapons, your quiver, your bow, go out to the field and take me venison and make me savory food, such as I love. Bring it to me that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. Now, here's a couple of questions. How old is Esau at this time? All right, let's go back to the timeline here. Let's remind ourselves. Okay, when this happens, Isaac thinks he's going to die when he's 137 years old. Jacob and Esau at this time are 77. This is when Rebekah is telling Jacob, go put on a hairy garment of Esau. Okay, this is how old they are. Yeah, now here's the one question. A lot of people think that Jacob was deceptive. Well, let's think a minute. Esau was deceptive. How come Esau didn't tell Dad, I sold the birthright to Jacob, you need to bless him? Oh, no. He's lying. He's being deceptive. And he thinks he's going to be able to get it. Esau's the one who was deceptive. Okay, Jacob legitimately bought that birthright. It is Jacob. Jacob wasn't deceiving anybody. And as a matter of fact, did you know Rebekah never deceived him either? Look at this. Watch. Genesis 27:5-10. Here's something also that's very interesting to me. When Rebekah heard what Isaac spoke to Esau, his son, not her son, his son, Esau went to the field to hunt for venison and to bring it. Rebekah spoke unto Jacob, her son. He's your son. This is my son. I just thought that was kind of an interesting catch. But listen, Rebekah is not deceptive at all here. She says, hey, I heard your father speak to Esau, your brother, saying, bring me venison, make me savory food that I may eat and bless you before the Lord before my death. And she says, so my son, hearken to my voice, according to that which I command you. You go to the flock, fetch me from there 2 good kids of the goats. I will make savory food for your father, such as he loves, and you'll bring it to your father that he may eat, so that he may also bless you before his death. Did he say anything about being deceptive? He just said, hey, Dad thinks he's going to die. He wants to bless Esau. I want to make sure you get blessed too. So bring me something and I'll cook it. That is not deceptive whatsoever. Rebekah took goodly raiment of her oldest son, which were with her in the house, put them on Jacob, her younger son. Now, here's what is incredible that's not in your notes. You may want to add. Do you know this whole event unfolding where Jacob is putting on Esau's clothing happened on Passover? That was the date of this event. Just as Messiah also came disguised to win the blessing on Passover. They didn't recognize him either. And he came and died on Passover. Now, look at Genesis 27:19. Jacob here does tell a fib. But he says unto his father, I am Esau, your what? He doesn't say your eldest son. He says, I'm the firstborn. Because he got the firstborn rights. And he says, I've done as you've bade me. Pray, sit, eat my venison, that your soul may bless me. Now let's jump to verse 27-29. Okay, now Esau comes near, kisses him, and he smells the smell of his raiment. No, this is still Jacob. This is still Jacob. And he says, okay, I see the smell of my son as the smell of the field, which the Lord has blessed. Therefore, give you of the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth, plenty of corn and wine. Let people serve you. Let nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers. And let your mother's sons bow down to you. And cursed be everyone that curses you, and blessed be he that blesses you. Wow, this is what Isaac said over Jacob. What a phenomenal blessing. But you know what's interesting too that I just now caught? I have to look at this more in the Hebrew to see. Did Jacob and Esau have other brothers? Look what it says. Be Lord over your brothers, not brother. Let your mother's sons. Okay, it's not just the two of you. The scripture doesn't say, but I almost wonder how many other brothers they may have had after they were born. Just something to ponder. But look at what Hebrews 11:20 says. It says, by faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau, both, not one over the other, concerning what? Things to come. Things to come. Wow. Well, guess what? One of the things to come was he was blessed with the dew of heaven. The dew of heaven always equates to the resurrection of the dead. And so what he was saying, may you rise from the dead. Look at Isaiah 26, verse 19. Your dead men shall live, together with my dead body shall they arise. Awaken, seeing you that dwell in the dust. For your dew is as the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead. When you read the Song of Songs also in chapter 5, here she is at the point of death, and he mentions how his hair is filled with dew. The dew has to do with the resurrection of the dead. All right. Now, here's another verse. I'm not sure if it's on your notes. I hope it is. But it's Genesis 27, 32 through 34. That's the next verse. Okay, I'll read it if you don't have it. But listen to this. Now, Esau comes to Isaac, and Isaac His father said to him, "Who are you?" And he said, "Well, I am your son, your firstborn Esau." Now there he lies. He was the eldest, but he no longer had the firstborn rights. And it says, Isaac trembled very exceedingly, and he said, "Well, who is he then that has taken the venison and brought it to me? And I have eaten of all before you even came, and I've even blessed him. Yea, and he shall be blessed." And when Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me, even all me also, O my father." And he's almost 80 years old. Jacob and Esau are 77 years old when this happens. Okay, now let's look at the Haftorah. I went over time. Here, I'll wrap it up. From Malachi 1:1, here's the burden of the word of the Lord to Israel by Malachi. And Malachi 1:2, God says, "I've loved you, says the Lord, and yet you say, wherein have you loved us? Well, was not Esau Jacob's brother, said the Lord, yet I loved Jacob." God is reminding Israel here that he's in covenant with them, and he's the one who chose them. God witnessed all the horrible things that Esau had done earlier, especially Malachi is prophesying around 433 BC. This is after the Babylonian captivity, after Ezra and Nehemiah have restarted the temple system. And in this portion, the temple has already been rebuilt, and they are the new generation offering sacrifices again. You would think they would be grateful. As Esau, Israel was showing a disdain for God. As such, the blessings will turn into cursings. Because when God had blessed them with abundance, they consumed it upon himself. They didn't put it back into building the kingdom of God. We'll close with this verse from the New Testament, Matthew 10:29 through 33. It says, "Are not two sparrows sold for a farthing, and one of them will not fall to the ground without your Father? But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Don't fear, you are of more value than many sparrows. Whoever therefore will confess me before men, him will I confess also before my Father which is in heaven. Whoever denies me before men, him will I also deny before my Father which is in heaven." We need to realize that God loves us so much. And we need to put a greater value upon ourselves. Not being self-centered, but when God blesses us, we can't exalt ourselves and say, we're better than you, nah. No, we have to, when God blesses us, that's when we're supposed to spread the blessings around. Fasten your seatbelts. Here we are decoding the book of Ezekiel. And this last week, I've really devoted a lot of time in trying to get ahead. And we're going to be in the book of Ezekiel this month, all of next month, and we're going to be wrapping it up the first Shabbat in January. Okay, so we only have about 8 more weeks. About 6-7 more weeks of Ezekiel. And we're going to be entering everyone's favorite chapters here pretty soon, 36, 37, 38, and then we get into the 40s with the millennial temple and all of that. So we got some exciting things. But because I've already got almost all the way to January 2nd done. I've been working massively studying the book of Ezekiel this last week, trying to get everything done in advance. And there's some very interesting parallels, patterns, and things that we need to look at that apply to today, just like decoding Jeremiah, decoding Ezekiel, all of this. So we're going to begin with Ezekiel 29. That's the chapter we're on, verse 1 through 4. Now, some of you say, what? We haven't gotten to Ezekiel 26 yet. Well, that's because Ezekiel 29 happens before Ezekiel 26. Okay, so just like Jeremiah, the chapters were scrambled, the same thing with Ezekiel. So we're going to go to Ezekiel 29, and then we're going to go backwards to Ezekiel 26. But you're going to see why. It's plain as day that Ezekiel 29 happens calendar-wise before Ezekiel 26. So here's the first proof. Ezekiel 29, verse 1 through 4. It is in the 10th year. Okay, who knows it's the 10th year of what? Anybody knows what it means by the 10th year? Yes, it's the 10th year, not necessarily of the exile totally, because it happened a few years earlier, but it is the 10th year of Zedekiah's reign, the last king, okay, before the temple is destroyed, and he only reigns 11 years. This is the 10th year, but he reigned because King Jehoiakim and everyone went into exile. So yes, it's not only the 10th year of the exile of Jehoiakim with a bunch of people, and you're going to see it more plainly here in just a minute. But what happens, anyone know what happens on the 10th of Tevet? What is that? I talked about it last week. The 10th of Tevet, Zechariah 8, 18, 19, 20. He talks about 4 fast days that'll be turning into feast days. One of them is the 10th of Tevet. What happened on the 10th of Tevet? Jerusalem was besieged by Nebuchadnezzar, and God told Ezekiel, you write down this day, the name of this day, don't you ever forget it. This is the day that Nebuchadnezzar began his besieged. Okay, but that was in the 9th year. This is the 10th year. Okay, so it's the 10th year, it's the 10th month, and it's the 12th of the month. So in other words, the besiegement is going on for a year and 2 days. Okay, I just want you to get an idea of what's going on. And the word of the Lord comes to Ezekiel. Now remember, Ezekiel's not in Jerusalem. He's over there in Babylon. And he said, Son of man, let your face be turned against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and be a prophet against him and against all of Egypt. Now, if you remember, when we decoded the book of Jeremiah, in Jeremiah, he also prophesies against Egypt. Okay, so these are probably happening about the same time. Matter of fact, Jeremiah prophesies against many nations. Well, so does Ezekiel. And he's beginning here with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And the reason why is, in another year after Jerusalem destroyed, Babylon goes and destroys Egypt. So he's warning Egypt, your day is coming. Okay, it's going to be about a year and a half, but it's coming. And God says, I want you to be a prophet against Pharaoh and against all of Egypt. And here's what I want you to say, that these are the words of the Lord. See, I am against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great river beast stretched out among his Nile streams, who has said, look at what he says, the Nile is mine. I have made it for myself. And God says, oh yeah? Well, I'm going to put hooks in your mouth, and the fish of your streams will be hanging from your skin, and I will make you come up out of your streams with all the fish of your streams hanging from your skin. In other words, he's saying your days are numbered. Okay, well, here's part of the problem. Egypt was like the current great empire. Okay, but Assyria is another great empire. Now Babylon is coming to the forefront, and they're about to wipe out Assyria and then wipe out Egypt. But I want you to remember at this time, it was about 1,000 years earlier that God judged Egypt at the first Passover. Okay, so God has judged Egypt about 1,000 years earlier, and now he's about to judge them again. And look what he says in verse 6 through 9 of Ezekiel 29. He says, and all of the inhabitants of Egypt are going to know that I'm the Lord. Why? Because they have been a staff of reed to the house of Israel. When they take hold of you with the hand, you break and you rend their shoulder. And when they lean upon you, you break and you make all their loins to be at a stand. Therefore, says the Lord, behold, I will bring a sword upon you. I'm going to cut off from you man and beast, and the land of Egypt will be desolate and waste. And they'll know I am the Lord, because he has said, the river is mine and I have made it. Let me unravel this for you. To me, it's plain English, and it will be to you. The problem is, Egypt is very haughty and proud, saying they're the ones who made the Nile. I'm the one who made it. But the other problem is, Israel trusted Egypt as a nation to come to their defense. And when they leaned on Egypt, it broke. And the problem today is Israel cannot be relying on another nation for their help. I mean, all the nations that are godly should help. But Israel, even though that's good, they have friends, their ultimate hope has to be in God, not in another nation. How many of you know times change in nations? All right, well, look at this. In Ezekiel 29, verse 10 through 12. God is speaking to Egypt, and he says, therefore, behold, I'm against you. I'm against your rivers. And you know, see, even though they're God's rivers, he's the one who made it. He says, you want to think it's yours? Fine, it'll be yours. And he says it's going to be utterly waste and desolate from Migdol to Syene, even to the border of Ethiopia. No foot of man will pass through it. No foot of beast will pass through it. Neither will it be inhabited for how long? Isn't that interesting that Israel wandered in the wilderness for 40 years after leaving Egypt, and now Egypt has to wander for 40 years as well. And he says, I will make the land of Egypt desolate in the midst of the countries that are desolate. So God's going to be destroying many nations. Her cities among the cities that are laid waste will be desolate 40 years. I'm going to scatter the Egyptians also among the nations and will disperse them through the countries. Okay. So that brings us to verse 14 through 16. Look at this. Now we're still in Ezekiel 29. God says, I'm going to let the fate of Egypt be changed. And will make them come back into the land of Pathros, into the land from which they came, and there they will be an unimportant kingdom. So in other words, God is going to restore Egypt, but Egypt will no longer have its former glory. It's kind of like Spain when they were the big kingdom until they persecuted the Jews, and then they tumbled and fell. And then England became the big kingdom until what? Okay, they also expelled the Israelis and everything, and they become an unimportant kingdom. And then the United States rises up, and depending on how the United States treats Israel, we may too become an unimportant kingdom. Look at this. It says it will be the lowest of the kingdoms. Never again will it be lifted up over the nations. God says, I'm going to make Egypt small so that they may not have rule over any nations. And Egypt will no longer be the hope of the children of Israel. Do you catch that? Right now, the United States is the hope of Israel. Well, we have to be very careful or God will judge the United States, especially if we betray the children of Israel, causing sin to come to mind when their eyes are turned to them, and they will be certain that I am the Lord. The problem Israel had, they would always look to foreign powers for help. That was their problem. Israel would always look to Egypt for help. Look at Ezekiel. Now, here's a mind-blowing date for you. We were just in the 10th year, right? Well, now look. In the 27th year, in the first month, on the first day of the month, okay, what month are we talking about here? Nisan 1. This is Nisan 1. This is the month of Passover. But it says the 27th year. The 27th year of what? And as I do a lot of research, because I was trying to figure out myself, okay, we already know it's the 10th year, but that means that 10th year is also the 27th year of something. So I was researching, trying to find out what happened 27 years earlier. I will tell you shortly. Listen to this. The word of the Lord comes to me saying, Son of man, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, made his army do hard work against Tyre. The hair came off every head and every arm was rubbed smooth. He and his army got no payment out of Tyre for all the hard work which he had done against it. For this cause, the Lord said, see, I'm giving the land of Egypt to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. He's going to take away her wealth, take her goods by force and everything which is there. This will be the payment for his army. I have given him the land of Egypt as the reward for his hard work because they were working for me, says the Lord. Wow! Isn't that amazing? God calls Nebuchadnezzar his servant. Nebuchadnezzar, as evil as he was being employed by God. This is what we have to realize. We don't put our trust in man. And when we see things unfolding, we know God is in control. Everyone is his servant. But going back to the 27th year now, and the first month, on the first day of the month, what is significant about that? Well, let me show you. Look at this slide. King Josiah, who was the boy king at 8 years old, and then he got older, and if you remember, he had the largest revival take place, the best Passover that ever taken place. There was a revival. It was a false peace or a false revival. But even with that said, here was the problem. Josiah had 2 wives. It never works, guys. Okay. One of them was Hamutal. The other one was Zebudah. When Josiah dies, you have 2 political parties both vying to be the leader. And you're going to find there's a whole bunch of foreign influence over deciding who is going to be the leader. If you'll notice, Zebediah had two kids, Jehoiakim, who at this time of Josiah's death is 25 years old. And he has a son named Jehoiakim, okay? Now, who's 8 years old at the time. Over on the other side, Hamutal has two sons, not a son and a grandson. So he has two different kids. One is Jehoiahaz, who's 23 years old. And then another one, Zedekiah, who is going to be 21 years old when he becomes king, but he's only 11 years old at the time. Okay, so now if you look at the ages, Jehoiakim is 25, Jehoiahaz is 23, okay? Zedekiah is only 11 years old, and Jehoiakim is only 8 years old. Who should Israel put as king? The oldest, right? Who is the oldest? It's Jehoiakim. He's 25 years old. Well, guess what Israel does when Josiah dies? They prefer a different political party, and they put Jehoiahaz, who is 2 years younger. He's the firstborn of Hamutal, even though he's not the firstborn of Josiah. They make him king. Well, guess what? After Egypt kills Josiah, they come to Jerusalem, and Jehoiahaz, the first king that Israel installed, only lasted 3 months. Egypt, the foreign power, says, you're out of here. They haul him off to Egypt, and guess what? They put Jehoiakim in charge, who reigns for 11 years. Now, if you're Jehoiakim, and you just got burned by Israel, and the Egyptian king puts you in charge, guess who you're going to be beholden to? Egypt. And now he's leaning on Egypt to protect them from Babylon, okay? And so Jehoiakim is the second one. He becomes king at 25. He's 25 years old because the other guy only reigned for 3 months. Well, guess what happens? Zebediah, whose son just became king, wants her grandson to be the next king. She doesn't want it to be passed over to Zedekiah. So what does she do? She makes Jehoiakim at 8 years old co-regent or co-king. So when Babylon comes and hauls Jehoiakim off to Babylon, Israel installs Jehoiakim, but then what happens? Babylon comes back and says, forget you, hauls Jehoiakim off to Babylon, and he installs Zedekiah, the other mother's son, as king for 11 years. So you can see the foreign influence in their political system of the two fighting parties. Does any of that sound familiar? It's a miracle. Thank you for joining with us. We hope you learned something new today. Please partner with us in fulfilling the scriptures about taking God's Torah to the nations. You can watch this whole program for free, along with all of our other archive programs right from our website link shown below. We hope to see you soon at our location right here in Tacoma, Washington. See you soon.